Hello, I'm Maz, and welcome back to the channel. This is actually my first me just talking solo about stuff I like video, so so hopefully this will still be enjoyable. If you want more scripted content, just check out the other videos. I actually have a playlist. Okay, so I've been thinking about making this video about the Dragon Prince for a while now. An earlier version of the script, or should I say video essay, exists from a few months before Season 5 aired, but I never got around to finishing it. I can't quite blame younger me, though. He also made this script damn long, and I borrowed most of his work for this script, so, sorry, future me. Wait a minute. Aw, man, that's me. Also, note from future me, I did decide to make this into a two-parter, so keep looking out for that. It'll be out, hopefully, not long after this is out. Anyway, so let's get this out of the way. I love morally gray characters, and the Dragon Prince lives in the morally gray. So, of course, my favorite character is Claudia. She is the perfect archetype of a fallen hero. In this video, I would like to explain my predictions for either her redemption or the possibility of her maybe becoming the final villain, or even both, in Season 7. So buckle in! Welcome to Show Analysis. Yeah, I know, not as catchy as game theory, I know. But to fully understand the direction this show will go, let's discuss what brought Claudia to where she is after the events of Season 6 going into Season 7. And we will start the first 3 seasons. Claudia is introduced to us in Season 1 as a silly and dorky dark mage whom Callum, our main protagonist, has a hopeless crush on. It is slowly hinted that Claudia has returning feelings. However, the show does make it abundantly clear that she's far more invested in the works of her father, the High Mage Viren. In fact, a lot of Claudia's whole character and her faults that seem to be driving her further and further into villainy can all be traced back to her relationship with her father. Due to human spite towards everything the elves had done and having to deal with some hardships of his own, Viren's views of elves have definitely passed on to Claudia. Claudia also shares her father's ambitious nature and investment in the knowledge of dark magic, which is shunned by the elves and the dragons. Another important point of note, which she reveals to Ezrin in late Season 2, is how her parents' separation when she was young left a huge impact on her. Her brother Soren chose to stay with their father, but Claudia could not make up her mind, so her mother decided for her, saying that she did not want to separate the two siblings. This left an impact on Claudia that made her fear of rejection and loneliness far worse. So that leads us to where we find ourselves at the beginning of the story, back with our main protagonist and his hopeless crush on a girl who might very well become one of his greatest adversaries. It actually starts out quite lovely, though. The feelings between the two seem genuine, and Claudia is quite protective over him and his little brother, the Crown Prince Ezrin. Claudia is a slight bit older than him and is already an excellent mage, and Callum, who seems to be terrible at combat, finds Claudia's magic to be fascinating. So, it only becomes more complicated when Callum's first act of magic is against Claudia's magic and how he acted against her to save the egg of the Dragon Prince. Season 2, however, has them reuniting. You see, after Callum settles the conflict that she and Soren were having with Rayla, we see her and Soren begin to try and convince the princes to return home to Catalyst. Now, while the two of them are actively trying to deceive them, we do see Claudia try to take a more civil route, arguing to Soren that they should be more honest to their friends. We even see Claudia's mutual feelings for Callum come to the forefront as they go on a date and almost kiss. Though I did say almost. You see, Claudia couldn't take the fact that Callum was unaware of the passing of King Harrow, his stepfather, and forgoes the kiss that they both wanted to tell him the truth. Things only get worse for Claudia and Soren from there when they try to take the princes home by force, but fail thanks to a clever ruse from Rayla. Later that season, she and Soren get into a scuffle with our heroes and a dragon that ended in Soren becoming completely paralyzed. As well as that, Callum dramatically uses dark magic, which he said he'd never do, against Claudia, and ends up unconscious and near death because of it. After the conversation between Claudia and Ezrin that I mentioned earlier, Claudia was willing to use dark magic to kill a small, innocent deer to give Soren the use of his body back. A fact that might unintentionally be scarier than it sounds given future events, but we'll get there. As Ezrin returns home in Season 3 to become king, so do Claudia and Soren come home to find their father imprisoned. Claudia then proceeds to, in blind loyalty to her father, narratively turn her back on both Ezrin and Soren. First by letting Viren usurp the throne from Ezrin, and then lock him, a 9-year-old boy mind you, in a cell, and then very publicly go against his wishes in a cruel show of force. And Claudia is completely complicit in all of it. She then turns her back on Soren as he begins to realize how toxic their father is, but Claudia refuses to believe it. Her feelings of betrayal get worse when Soren kills a version of their father to protect Ezrin, unaware that it was an illusion made by Claudia, but Claudia sees this as a betrayal, and the season ends with Viren's death and Claudia having revived him 2 years later. As you could probably see from my likely unnecessary recap of the first 3 seasons, trust me, I have a reason, Claudia has been very complicated so far. I do believe it to be important to explain the context of the central conflict between the humans and the elves that drives the story, to get a look at what is likely motivating Claudia in Season 4 and beyond, and especially going into Season 7 in December, and the possible parallels to the real world. The conflict stems mostly from the fact that the elves and dragons have looked down on the humans of this world for centuries. Humans supposedly aren't born with the potential for primal magic, a fact that Callum proves incorrect in the story, and it seems the dragons and the elves have looked down on them for this lack of magic the entire time. According to the story told at the very beginning of the show, one human created dark magic that used the essence of magical beings to power spells. Appalled at what they saw, the elves banished the humans to the west side of the continent. We also learn of a genocide that the dragons, one specifically, Solregum, committed against the humans for this, killing many innocents. And since then, there has been tension between the two. Phew, what a recap. I've seen discourse on the nature of this conflict online and who's more in the right, and while a lot of the fan base seems to believe that the humans are far more in the wrong than the dragons and elves, the show tries to tell us that both sides seem to be equally in the wrong. Personally, I find myself siding more with the humans. See, while dark magic is inherently a bad thing, it was the elves and dragons who had driven them to use it due to their far crueler treatment of humans. Not only seeing them as far inferior, but punishing the whole race for the actions of just a few individuals. Claudia, as someone invested in dark magic, understandably sees the treatment of humans in the past and is incredibly resentful. She instantly distrusts Rayla, and to be fair to her, Rayla was trying to kill Prince Ezrin at first. Her distrust is not exactly unwarranted. But in that same vein, we also see one of Claudia's biggest faults: her unwillingness to listen. Because even in early Season 1, when Rayla stopped her pursuit of the princes after finding the egg of the Dragon Prince, Claudia's reaction to Rayla's objections and Callum and Ezrin's concerns are not met very well. Claudia stands there as an example of how this conflict has shaped the minds of people into not trusting the other side no matter who it is. It's an odd comparison to make to the real world, but imagine, if you will, the current political positions of the United States and a lot of similar countries around the world. Going to try to not go too heavily into politics, but we are going to talk about how people are divided among conservative and liberal lines. So if this is not a part of the conversation you want to listen to, there will be timestamps in the description of the video. You see, I have friends who have been kicked out of their houses for either being LGBTQ or just honestly getting kicked out of their houses for being liberal, which is unequivocally horrible. But on the other hand, I know liberals who instantly shout out remotely conservative people. It's wrong, but in that vein, it's very understandable. So many bad things have been done to those who are minorities, it's easy to look at the whole group and hate all of them. It's not a perfect comparison, and one I'm sure is unintentional, if you even agree with me, but humans seem to be the more liberal ones in the circumstances, while the elves and dragons have more conservative views. As the elves and dragons in Xadia believe that there is a way that things need to be, and that change shouldn't happen at all. This is the attitude that pushed the humans into believing that they needed dark magic. I will say, though, that this lack of tradition does make for some of the more ignorant traits of humans as well. There's a plotline in Season 4 where a human woman, believing herself to be just and trying to help the elves, ignores a Sunfire elf tradition of mourning and douses a flame of a very important fire. It's a moment that rather hurts, seeing a grieving man be interrupted in a very harsh way like that, despite his pleading for her not to. Heck, even the human general, kick-ass deaf lesbian Amaya, fails to find a way to defend her actions in the following trial. However, she does manage to persuade the sentence to change from death, a very harsh elven tradition, to have the woman, who is an architect, build a religious site as penance, which feels like a very appropriate punishment. I feel like this likely gives a good idea of why Claudia believes the things she does, if I did an accurate job explaining. But I also want to highlight the stark contrast in the very little boy she betrayed. You see, Ezrin stands for something truly wonderful. The chance to move on and to move forward with peace and love. To forgive the sins of the past and not let them define you. This is the main message of the heroes in the story, from Callum to Rayla to even Soren when he finds himself turning against his father. Something Claudia has yet to understand, which brings me to Season 4. Oh, Season 4. Yes, more recapping. It may be unnecessary, but it's fun. So, Season 4 picks up with Claudia having resurrected her father after following the guidance of Erebos, aka Purple Daddy according to fans. I don't see it. He's a very powerful, star-touched elf who has been manipulating Viren for arguably years, depending on when you think he's been manipulated by that weird mirror of Erebos thing. But when it comes to Claudia, we get the sense from what appears to be a dead body in the background that Claudia has probably had to commit murder to bring him back, and even with that, Viren only seems to have 30 days to live, unless they can manage to free Erebos. Viren is unsurprisingly frazzled, but his mood becomes even more sour when Claudia introduces her new boyfriend, Tiresias, aka Terry, an Earthblood elf who is awkward and is just as zany as Claudia is. Okay, this is my moment here to express just how much Terry is a welcomed addition to the cast. Mystery of Erebos ups the tension a lot, and having him there as this kind of ball of sunshine is more than welcome. It's also good to have transgender representation, and they do it pretty interestingly. We'll get to that later. But we can see just how much he loves Claudia, and even Lord Sourpants Viren can't help but gain respect for him throughout the season. A very nice touch. Anyway, back to the essay. We actually see pretty quickly just how far Claudia has fallen within this time. When Viren begins to question whether or not he wants whatever it was he was searching for, he decides he would rather just enjoy his last days with his daughter and die in peace. And Claudia immediately slaps him. It's rather tragic to see a man who started off as a good person only to fall into dark influences begin to see the light again, only for it to be slapped out of him. Claudia can't seem to let go of Viren. The idea terrifies her, and from what we know of her past and her parents divorcing, yeah, of course it would. The next big moment of descent happens when Claudia tries to retrieve Viren's staff, the Staff of Xyard, which she needs to free Erebos. And she has Terry stay out to watch as she goes in to get it. When she finds it, however, she is discovered by the guard Ibis, a very powerful sky mage that we had met the previous season, who overhears her plans and attempts to stop her. During the oncoming and very brutal fight, we hear the speech of the now King Ezrin back in Katalis, where he talks about what I had mentioned before, the ability to look past the misdeeds of others and to move forward. But during this fight, Claudia is showing us exactly the violence this kind of malice can bring, as during the fight she has a chance to grab the staff or a dagger to try and kill a prone Ibis. She chooses to attack Ibis, nearly plunging the dagger into his chest. The tides of the fight do shift when he manages to pull her off, and when it looks like she is down for the count, Ibis begins to attempt to finish her off, knowing that she is attempting to free Erebos. At the last moment, though, the very staff that Claudia was there to get is sent through Ibis' back, and he falls to the ground, dying. We see that he was actually felled by Terry, trying to protect Claudia. Terry breaks down in tears, having never killed anyone before, and it is clear it is very traumatic for him. I'd be remiss to not say that Terry having killed Ibis is genuinely far more tragic than if it had been Claudia. Terry is introduced to us as someone who is pretty innocent and optimistic, the only slightly sketchy thing being that he was fine with Claudia's use of dark magic, but Terry is not a killer. Had Claudia done it, especially to Ibis, an elf, she would not have batted an eyebrow. Yet, this brings into question why Claudia seems to be in love with an elf if she hates them so much. I'd argue that the two are not mutually exclusive. We see a similar thing in one of the other human and elf relationships this season, Amaya and Janai. Janai's younger brother Kareem seems to care about Amaya, but disagrees with the idea that the Queen of the Sunfire Elves should marry a human. If you want to dissect this, you'll see that this is the same attitude as, well, clearly I can't hate humans, I have a friend who's a human. But to Kareem, Amaya is the exception. This is likely what Claudia sees in Terry that makes her ignore the fact that he's an elf. To her, Terry is the exception. It just so happens that she fell in love with the exception. It is also possible that she views Terry as a victim of Xadia's oppressive culture, not taking into account that he himself is Xadia. Back to the summary, I do have to briefly mention, as an important note, after the death of Ibis, we do meet a freaky-looking yet kind of endearing creature that is supposed to guide Claudia, Viren, and Terry to find Erebos so they can free him. Claudia and Terry name him Sir Sparklepuff. This becomes relevant later. Later in the season, Soren finds Claudia and manages to capture her to try and reason with her. This scene is excellent because we see just how far Soren has come and just how much he believes in Ezrin's words and message, and also how much Claudia actively opposes it. We begin to see her true motives as she begins to express her hatred for what the elves have done, therefore, sadly, Soren's message of forgiveness is ignored. The next really big thing to bring up in the slow descent of Claudia's morals is one of the final scenes of the season. After having seen Viren alive, Rayla chases after Claudia and her group in anger, as they try to escape what is basically a active volcano. Rayla manages to grab Terry in a hold with a sword to his throat, threatening Claudia, but instead of backing down, Claudia reveals to Rayla coins that have her parents and her mentor figure trapped in them, all of whom Rayla assumed were dead. Claudia takes joy in the shocked look on Rayla's face, and when Rayla refuses to back down, Claudia simply throws the bag of coins into the lava. Rayla was able to let go of Terry to grab them, but when she opened them, she only found 3 rocks in there. Claudia then left with Terry in tow, leaving Rayla to grieve. However, this one has a bit of a silver lining, as on their way out, Terry tells her how much he hated seeing her be so cruel, and he looked genuinely hurt. Affected by this, Claudia backtracks and throws the bag of coins to Rayla, wordlessly leaving a possible chance of redemption still open for Claudia. But who knows how much farther she'll fall before that even happens. Alright, let's really dive into this conflict now. You see, the show has given us a very engaging villain in Claudia, and I am excited to see how far she'll go into villainy. And I'm especially excited to see how the hero-villain dynamic between her and Callum plays out into later seasons. We get the biggest hint of how this rivalry might play out in the second to last episode of the season, entitled Rex Igneous, where we meet the dragon of the same name. When Callum figures out the dragon's riddle with relative ease, Rex Igneous replies, "Very clever, young human," which, at that point, Claudia enters, having not seen Callum since a previous fight in Season 2, and she says, "Yeah, You always were a clever human, weren't you, Callum? And this one line is our best look into what is about to occur in the last season of Mystery of Erebos. You see, there is a term in storytelling referred to as the necessary opponent moment. This is the part of a story where your antagonist proves why they are the most effective person to challenge your protagonist narratively. Interestingly enough, throughout Season 4, Claudia has 4 of them. One for each member of the Good Guy Squad. And we already went through them. Ezrin's is Claudia's big battle with Ibis, where she actively shows herself to be going against his words of wisdom. Soren's is the scene where he has her captured and is trying to reason with her. Rayla's is the scene where Claudia tricks her. And this scene with Rex Igneous is Callum's. And I believe the most important one. There's more to the relationship between these two characters than just a couple that never quite worked out. We can see it from early on when Callum gains interest in magic. It seems as if Claudia wants to teach him her magic, which he politely refuses on the basis that he doesn't want to learn dark magic. But this makes his later use of it to act against her far more of a betrayal. Callum and Claudia, as well as Viren, seem to each suffer from a mage's ambition, each with an unrivaled pursuit of magic for their own individual reasons. The notable difference is Callum's refusal to use dark magic and his belief in Ezrin's words of forgiveness and peace. But this is likely where the conflict between him and Claudia is going to really shine. Both having been very close, both likely still having a respect for each other, but neither willing to give up their position or their beliefs in how magic should be. Callum wants to believe what his brother preaches about the possibility of peace. He wants humans to be on equal standing to elves and dragons. But in this moment, with Rex Igneous, Claudia is basically telling him they will never see you as an equal. You will always be just a human to them. And of course I have to bring up the dark magic connection. Claudia believes, for most of the show, that dark magic is a necessary evil. But Callum learns primal magic. Their magic. The magic of their oppressors. It's a betrayal. Callum is even ashamed of the few times he was forced into dark magic. There's a plot point in Season 6 of Callum trying to rid his essence of dark magic. Hey, this is future me. Just here to tell you that this is where the first part of this video essay will end for right now. I will bring up the fact that today, as of editing, there has been a full release of a trailer for Season 7. Which does begin to mess with my theories a little bit, but that had to be expected. So, but I still stand by most of what I say in part 2 of this video essay. So, thank you very much. Please stay tuned for more if you like this, and feel free to like and subscribe. See you soon.